Hello everybody, welcome to the first Art Journal Watch Along video of the new year. I can't believe it's 2015 already. So let's just get right into it. I decided to go with some paper piecing and less with the painting part this week. I did paint some other stuff this week and I just thought, well, maybe I want to go for some paper piecing artwork again. So I took my stack of papers, pattern papers that I had laying around from other projects where I had only like half a sheet or only some scraps, and I tried to make something out of it. So I'm working on a portrait layout with a page in my new book this week, and I'm starting off with this cream colored, brownish colored paper here. So after so many red and white, blue, dark green, gold, silver colors the last couple of weeks, just because it was Christmas time, I thought I wanted to go with something fresh, something so not wintry and something not Christmassy or like the typical New Year colors, right? So I decided to go for brown and pink as the main background colors and a tiny bit of this fresh green that you can see on the left hand side of the screen already. So I wanted to go for a calendar just because, well, we're starting a new year. We reset the clock pretty much, and so I thought I would make, well, a calendar page, but not with very many pieces depicting all of the months, but just the first paper that you flip over or tear when you start a new year with a new calendar. So that's what I'm gonna design and that's what I'm gonna make this week. So I'm having all kinds of pattern papers, cardstock, all different sizes and qualities and thicknesses of the papers, and some of them I did some tearing on, like with this pink one here. You can see on the white edges that I just made it look rough and torn apart. And I'm using just normal paper glue here, nothing fancy, to adhere all of these paper parts. And while you can see me doing that, I just wanted to say I'm very happy that you are with me watching along to all my art journal videos again this year. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy and maybe get some creative ideas from the things that I do here. Maybe you learn some techniques that are new to you, or maybe you just see something that I do differently, and sometimes maybe it's just boring. I don't know yet, because I don't know what all of the pages this year will be like. You can see here I also did the tearing thing on some cardboard. You can see that it's colored all the way through, so this is a high quality cardstock that I'm using here, and I'm talking about the dark pink one that I'm just handling right now. And I'm just trying to place them and see how they fit nicely, looking like a collage but not being too wild, because I still want that to be the background, and this is not the focal point of my piece this week. So I want something interesting, but I don't want to take away too much of the focal point, the said calendar that I'm going to create this week. So once I'm happy with all the paper and cardstock pieces on my background, I'm just adding a bit of that paper glue and gluing everything down. By By the way, I really like those birds on that pattern paper. It came from a pad that is 12 by 12 inches, which is 30.5 by 30.5 centimeters. And it has all of these very nice, lovely floral, it's actually floral backgrounds, I think. So I got that paper pad. I saw that somewhere. I think it was in my craft store, not sure. But I have it for maybe 3 months now, and I'm using it, although these are like the pretty papers that sometimes you hesitate to use just because they look so pretty and you don't want to screw them up in an art journal page or whatever. And sometimes they are in stock for quite a while, but I make an effort not to have them sit on my shelf for too long, but to really work with these kinds of materials. And since I'm restricting myself anyways with materials and not buying all the different kinds of things that you could buy, if I have something similar in my stock that I could use for whatever I want to do, I want to make, I'm actually having an advantage here, I think, because since I'm using my pretty papers, I don't have them on my shelf, so I need to rebuy other pretty things, and it's like a treat for me when I finish one of these pattern paper pads and I can go shopping for 1 or 2 new ones. So I'm not buying more than, I should say, 3 or 5 at a time. And once they are all used up, I can go shopping again, which, again, for me is a treat. So this white cardstock here is going to be my calendar. And this is also just a scrap piece of cardstock. And I'm trying to figure out where I want to place it, how big I want that pink, or I should say rose-colored frame should be. And this piece there is actually an envelope for a card, and it was just too big. So this piece that I'm having in my hand right now is actually 1 card base. And I tried some different inks on them before I used it on another piece of that kind of cardstock to make a card for a customer. And so I have this one laying around, and you think this is not a scrap piece, but on the back side of this piece here, actually there's quite a bit of ink. So I cut my rose-colored cardstock to the size that I want, and I eyeballed the frame. I think it worked out quite nicely. And I decided right ahead that I wanted to have the green colors on the calendar and only a tiny bit here and there in the background, which I'm going to add later on. So I'm cutting this rectangle colored pattern paper to the sizes that I want. And I actually thought that I would use that bow on top. Just to have maybe, the ribbon where you hang your calendar on a wall or something, but in the end I did not use it. So I like the difference between those geometrical looking clean shapes of the greenish paper on the back, on the calendar, and those wild unplanned ripped pieces of paper in the background. I like the difference of that, which actually helps having the calendar in the end really being the focal point of the page. It's not only the difference in color, but also the difference between how I use or how I treat those materials. It being cutting neat in rectangles or later on also circles, or it being just tearing paper and having it look, well, I think it's a bit of wild. it looks unplanned, and I like that. So I'm using a bit of cardstock behind that pattern paper in light green and dark green, just to, well, create a shadow or dimension, I would say, on the calendar piece. And in the end, I liked the dark green way better. That's why I'm going for the dark green cardstock here. And I'm just using the pattern paper as a template, and I'm cutting the dark green rectangles just a tiny bit bigger so that they create a shadow or a border behind those rectangle greenish pattern paper. So now that I'm done with the first part of the cutting, I'm moving on to punching. So I do have a couple of those punchers with different kinds of circles, different sizes of circles. I do have a couple of scallops too and some stars, but I wanted to go with clean shapes on this particular page, especially since the background papers are torn and do not follow any pattern there. I wanted to make sure that everything that I put on top has a very clean line and is just rectangles or circles. No more fuzzy, romantic, wild stuff on there. Otherwise it would just be too much, too busy. And I think, especially with this very dark brown cardstock that I just punched a couple of circles with, I think it calms the page down, quote unquote calm, I should say. It's still wild, but it just is a tool to guide the eye of the viewer through the page in the end. And it repeats certain colors that are also used in the background, so it just looks more harmonic in the end. I'm also using the same pattern paper, the pink one, and I'm trying the green one too, the one with the rectangles here, but in the end I'm not gonna use it. See how wild it looks just by putting the pattern paper into the background as well. It's just not appealing to the eye, at least not to my eye, and I think I'm not the only one with that feeling. So I'm using only the rose-colored pattern paper and otherwise only plain cardstock like this green one here. I'm gonna use a bit of the dark pink cardstock as well, but I'm not gonna use any other colored pattern paper. It's okay with the rose one, I think, because the circles are actually at the place on the page where I used the same pattern paper in the background, so it just looks not too wild, but it's just a repetition and a bit of added dimension. That's all what the pattern paper is going to do for the page. At least the parts where I cut the circles. I'm only talking about that part. So now that I see these lovely curled papers here, I thought, well, maybe I just make some spirals. So I'm tearing a bit more of the cardstock, and then I'm gonna run it over my bone folder. But in the end, I only used one piece, and that's the brown one on the left-hand side, and I straightened it out again. I would have loved the look of the spirals on top of the page, but since I'm going to shut the book when I'm not working on it, and since this is, well, it would flatten everything out, it wouldn't look pretty in the end when you flip through the book later. So I did not go for the spirals. It would just have been nice on this one page if I would not have been working in a book. So in the end, sometimes less is more. So it's okay. So now that I have an idea and sort of a plan of where I want to put what, I'm starting inking things and then gluing everything onto the page that I want to have. So I'm having these tiny ink pads here, and I'm using a pink one that is pretty much the same color as the background pink pattern paper. And I'm just going all around the edges to, well, create a bit of depth. I'm going to use other techniques later on as well to, well, have a drop shadow for the calendar. But I'm not starting off with a heavy shadow. I'm going light with just this pink ink pad here, and I'm going to add more shadow way later if I feel I need it. It's always easier to add some more shadow than reworking everything and lightening everything up. So with the white page, I decided to go for a turquoise ink pad here, because this color, this petrol turquoise bluish green, is also in the pattern paper. So even by adding this color here and not going for green maybe with the ink, it still looks harmonic, and it helps the page coming together, having some repetition even of the bluish parts in the green pattern paper just makes it nicer to the eye. It stands out, but then again, it also blends in, which I wanted to achieve here. I tried the bow again on top, but like I said, I'm not gonna use it in the end. So I'm using some liquid craft glue for the cardstock to put it down to the quote-unquote not visible yet calendar, and I'm going to use the same glue for all of the other pieces, just because I'm too lazy to go back and forth between the paper glue and the liquid craft glue here. This one is just stronger, so it holds cardstock in place way better, and I'm just, like I said, too lazy to go back and forth between both kinds of glue here. I'm offsetting all of the pattern papers. Again, I want to create kind of a drop shadow, but I also want to increase the surface that the colored cardstock and paper is going to sit on. I won't draw anything onto this calendar. So again, I said the white cardstock is going to be the calendar page on this art journal. So I don't want to paint anything, since I wanted to go for mainly paper artwork only this week. So by offsetting the cardstock and the pattern paper, I just increase the surface of colored things on top of the calendar without making it look too crowded. So I think I like that most about the calendar piece in the end. Not the art journal piece, but the calendar. So I'm letting the glue dry a tiny bit before I work on other stuff on the calendar. And meanwhile, I'm gluing down the circles onto the page. And I'm going for rough eyeballing places here. I did not measure where I want to have them. They're not centered all the way. And that makes some of those circle combinations look like peacock feather eyes. And I think that actually helps along the page. It guides your eye kind of through the art journal page, and I don't do that all the time on purpose. Sometimes, or most of the times, I actually just place things and realize only very much later, especially through the times when I edit the video and do the voiceovers, just like now, I only realized that I incorporated something that guides the eye through the page. It's weird, I know, but I don't always do it on purpose. So while I glued down a couple of those circles, I already realized that there were too few, and I'm going to punch a couple of them later on. But first, I'm going to glue down the frame for the calendar, which is this rose-colored piece here. And I went quite centered because I didn't want to cover up the birds. I think they're just too pretty, and especially the upper one now is like sitting on top of the calendar frame, which I think it's just a nice touch. Also, in those birds, they do have a bit of green in their feathers, which helps along the calendar again, since green and green, the repetition topic. So I think that's why I unconsciously picked the green pattern paper to work with today as a focal point. I'm not putting all of the circles on top of each other. Like the green one on the right hand side of the page is offset by with a brown circle underneath. I didn't want to go for the same design or the same mechanic all the way through. So that's why some of them have circle on top of circle and other ones are just having offset circles. So this is the point, what I mentioned earlier, that I'm flattening out the brown paper or cardstock. It's actually cardstock again. And I'm just gluing it down as a frame on the right hand side of the calendar frame. I'm covering a tiny bit of the bird here, but it doesn't matter since you can see the whole face of the bird, and pretty much, except for 2% of the bird, everything's visible. So I don't feel that I covered up something that I actually wanted to be shown on the page. Because I made the cardstock into a spiral earlier, it resisted the glue a bit, so I just used my glue bottle as a weight here for a tiny bit. Excuse me. And that helped the brown cardstock being glued to the paper. So now that my calendar is dry and all of the pieces have settled onto the white cardstock, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to place it. If I'm going to put it at an angle or just straight on the frame. And while I'm thinking about that, I'm going to punch a couple more circles. The same light rose tone that I used for the calendar frame. Going to punch a couple of those. And I'm also going to punch only half circles that will sit at the border of the page, so that you feel like we only get a glance at something that is way bigger, if you know what I mean. So in my imagination, the page would be way bigger, and I'm only showing a part of it here, which is what is suggested by these half circles at the border of the page. And I'm making sure that I don't use too many, otherwise the page would be again just too full, too busy, and well, I would have to cover up a lot of these pretty pattern papers in the background that I actually want to be looking through and be visible. So now that I punched enough of the circles, I'm gluing them down again. Just putting a tiny blob of glue on the back and placing them. That's the nice thing with the liquid glue. You can manipulate the cardstock or paper for a bit longer, so you can it's easier to place the things. I'm also adding one more of these dark pink circles. Just underneath the light rose one. Again, I'm not putting the upper circle in the middle, of which suggests a bit of, or which reminds you of a peacock feather. And I actually like that a lot. It's also looking quite retro, like 70s wallpaper pattern, but I don't mind. I think it's a nice touch. I used the green cardstock, the dark green cardstock in the background on the calendar, and I used the light green one only in the background so far for those circles. But the light green color is in the pattern paper on top of the calendar, so I thought I would repeat that dark green cardstock once in the background as well. And that's why I punched one of those medium-sized circles with the dark green cardstock, and I'm using the same pink or rose-colored paper on top that I also used for the frame of the calendar. So now that I have everything on my page except for the calendar, I'm taking care of that again. And I'm running the edges of the calendar across my bone folder here, just to curl up the edges and get a bit of dimension. And it's way more difficult on the lower side where I did add the cardstock, but I'm gonna manage a tiny bit later. So I want to create some dimension here. So for the lower part of the cardstock piece here, I'm going to use foam tape so that it looks like a calendar page being curled up. But I'm not gonna use it on the upper part. I'm just gonna glue it flat onto the page, which creates the dimension and also, well, creates the illusion of a calendar paper piece being curled up. I don't know if you have those in your country, but especially here in Europe, we do have these tiny calendars where you tear one piece of paper a day. And those curl up on the lower part in the end. So I think that's what I was inspired by or reminded of when I went for a calendar page. So I'm taking off the cover sheet of the foam tape, and on top of the calendar piece I'm just putting a tiny blob of craft glue, and then I'm gluing my calendar page down. I did put it down at a slight angle And I can't really tell you why I did that. I think it's just again my hand brains that did that, and not my actual brain. If you already watched along a couple of art journal pages last year, you know that I think I do have two brains, one in my hand and one in my head. And the one in my hand actually is the one that is responsible for very many things that I do when I do some artwork. I'm not actively thinking about things. So I'm having this tiny brass thing here that I want to glue on top, and I used super glue, but I'm just not too successful with putting it down. It's pretty much all over my hand. It's glued to my finger. So I'm using a tiny bit of tweezer thingies here to get rid of that. And then I had to wash my hands. Otherwise I would have glued everything to my fingers. So the next thing that I did was punching out the number 2015, again making a calendar. So I'm punching out the 2015 out of this sheet here, and that one I had for ages. You see that I used a couple of letters already and numbers too, but I had that for at least 13 years, 14 years. And I bought 4 sheets of that, and I'm still using it again years later. I have to say I didn't do paper or paper piecing or art journal pages for most of those years. So if I would have, I guess I would have used those punchy pieces way earlier. But I'm using them up now, or since beginning of 2014, I should say. So at one point those sheets will be gone. I'm just placing those 4 numbers and see where I want to have them. I think the lower right hand side of the calendar is perfect. Since this cardstock is black, it's gonna stand out anyways, and it has another layer, another dimension as well, so I don't have to work too much or make sure that I have a light background for everybody to be able to see that 2015 is on that calendar. Another thing that I'm adding here are 3 buttons, and they have the same color as those light green cardstock circles, so I thought it would just be a nice touch. It would add another thing, another interest on the page, but it would not be too much in your face or take away from all the other things on the page. So I'm using the same super glue to glue those buttons down. And I think 3 is the magic number here. Odd numbers are better anyways because it's just more appealing to the eye. But I'm not even sure that I had more than 3 green buttons in my stock. So I thought it would just be nice to have them throughout the page. I'm using a few dots of the same super glue to glue down the numbers. I could have used my craft glue as well, but those numbers are so tiny, and the craft glue bottle is just way bigger, so it would have been quite possible that some of the glue would leak out and you could see it in the end. And I didn't want to have that, so I used the strongest glue that I have with just a tiny dot here and there, and that way I could be sure that the numbers are attached to the page, but you don't see any glue. I'm having the 0 be a bit lower than all of the other numbers. And I don't even know why I did that. Again, it's just something that my hands do, and that in the end I find very nice and very, very sweet. I think it just makes the calendar page look handmade. So maybe this is a calendar that somebody made for a friend or a family member. So I guess that's why. So now that I have the majority of my page done, it's just adding some more details here and there that I have to do. So first off, I'm using some colored pencils to go over parts of the circles and add some, well, maybe you could, a shadow, or I'm just adding something that would suggest that these circles are 3D. So I find that on cardstock you can easily achieve that by using a colored pencil or pastel chalk in the same color family, just a bit darker. And that's what I'm doing here with the dark green pencil for the light green circles. And I'm going to use a dark pink that is almost purple. Going to use that on a few of those rose and pink circles as well. I'm not gonna add any dimensional stuff to the brown circles, but I'm going to use a white pen, a permanent marker, later on those brown circles, or pretty much on all the brown parts that are in the foreground. I'm not talking about those 3 strips in the background. I'm going to do something different with those in a few minutes. I'm not too happy with the shape of this lower rose colored half circle, since the shadow or the second color didn't come out in the right angle. So I think it could suggest a shadow, but not a 3D effect. It's way better, for example, with the, again, like I said, the green circles and the one that I'm working on right now. And also other ones. This one here, the pink one on the left-hand side, this half circle, this works out way better. But sometimes you just mess up, and I think that's okay for an art journal. If I would have created a piece that I wanted to give away or wanted to sell, I would have glued another half circle on top of the lower one. That's the only thing that didn't work out on this page, but again, it's okay. I'm also making sure that I'm using a very light hand when I draw in those lines with a colored pencil, just to have some more room on how much color I want to have on the circles. Now that I'm done with the colored pencils and happy with the outcome, at least for the most part, I'm adding some white dots on the dark brown pieces, meaning this scrap piece right here underneath the calendar. And I'm also going around the circles, the dark brown circles, with the same pattern, which adds something to the circles and doesn't make them look flat, but it's not too much that it is in your face. Like, this is pretty much a major theme of the page, balancing the things that are prominent and guiding your eye through the page, and the things that are more subtle and make the page be complete and be harmonic in the end. So I think the white dots here add some interest and some details, but still the dark brown circles are enough in the background that they don't overtake the prominence of the focal point in the page. I think the birds are pretty much borderline in that regard, but I I think all in all, it's okay in the end. It's okay balanced. So I'm using a very dark green pen here. This is just a normal water-based pen. I think it's water-based. And I'm just going around the border or the frame of the calendar just to create a shadow or something that separates the rose-colored frame from the rose-colored background as well, just to make the shape of the frame more visible, and therefore adding depth, I would say is the right word. And I'm smudging the pen for as long as I can, which is only half a second. That simple border pretty much separates the calendar from the background, and that's what I was saying earlier on, together with the pink ink border. It's just enough to separate the focal point from the background. So with the same white permanent marker, I'm going around the right hand side and the lower part of the numbers. Since this is not plain cardstock, but it is one of those wavy cardstocks, my lines won't be straight. But I don't mind, it's just well, tiny highlights or something that I want to add here. And it's okay that they are not straight lines just because I'm working on wavy cardstock here. The last thing that I'm going to do, or pretty much the last thing, is curling up the lower part of the calendar paper again and adding some black ink to it so that it looks used, or well, that it also gives or it adds to the depth thing that I was just talking about. So it separates the calendar sheet from the rose-colored background a bit. But I'm being very, very scarce with the black ink on the white paper. The blue is pretty much enough. So I'm also going around the whole page with that same ink pad. Again, it just brings together the different kinds of backgrounds paper a bit, and it also functions as a border or a frame, which I think just makes the page look a bit more complete, just nicer to the eye. After that, I only have to add the date to the page, and then I'm pretty much done. So I hope you enjoyed watching along to the first video of the year. I'm going to have one of these every Monday this year, just like last year, so have fun. Oh, I just forgot. Haha! I added some white chalk onto the dark brown background parts just to lighten them up a tiny bit and create some more depth between the dark brown circles that are just sitting on top like so. So again, where was I? Thank you very much for watching. If you want to see more of these art journal pages, I do have a whole playlist for that on my channel. Just check out the playlist. There's one for the real-time videos and one for the time-lapse videos if you want to see some stuff that I did in 2014 and either didn't have a chance yet to watch them, or maybe you're new to my channel. So please like, share and subscribe. As always, have a very good one. Go create. And I'm going to see you tomorrow with a new start of a new series, which is Tiny Tuesday. Stay tuned for that. Have a very good one. Goodbye.